Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So throughout the month of February, I joined a book club on Instagram, mostly because I've always wanted to join a book club and because I found out at the beginning of the month that for February, their book of the month that they were going to read is Anelthalien by H.A. Pruitt. And she is my author friend, she is my editor, and I've been meaning to read her books anyway, so this kind of gave me a good excuse to read her book and to join the book club and have some fun doing it and get behind the scenes stuff. I'll have a link in the description below to the Instagram account so you guys can join it, because they do every other month. They read a book, and you read a book throughout the whole month, so it gives you plenty of time to read it, and every week you get sent behind the scenes stuff from the authors of the books, and then every week they have a post where you can talk about it with everybody else, and questions and different things about the book that you liked and stuff. So today I'm going to be reviewing Anelthalien by H.A. Pruitt. Again, she's a really good author friend and an editor, the editor who edits my books. I'm still going to edit this objectively and everything and give you my honest opinion on it, so let's get right into this. I'm super excited. So basically I want to start out this by saying number one, this book does feature young teenage characters, and I do not like that. I don't read teenager characters very well. I don't get into books that read them. When I was younger, I did. I used to love The Hunger Games and Divergent and Twilight, and some of those books. But nowadays, I doubt I could read those kind of books and enjoy them. When I was younger, if The Maze Runner had come out when I was a teenager, I probably would have loved it. But it came out when I was an older adult, and I just never did get into The Maze Runner. So bear in mind that I do not enjoy reading books about younger teenagers. It's a me problem. I don't know why. There are a lot of wonderful books out there that do feature teenagers. So with that in mind, that's kind of my premise, is that because this book does feature 4 teenage characters, that is not my typical thing that I enjoy reading. I like reading adults closer to my own age, preferably fantasy books where they don't really mention the age of the adult. We just know it's like kind of like 20s and 30s. Like that's kind of the range where I like to read these days. But with that in mind, I did actually get into the book, and I did enjoy the characters because they were written in a way that was very relatable. One of the main characters, I would say the main character of the book, in this one at least, her name is Kendall, and it starts off, one of her scenes starts off where she's in high school and kind of just doing a bunch of high school, like typical high school problems. And when I was reading that chapter, it honestly really, really brought me back to high school, honestly, and the problems, and just made me feel like a teenager again. Now the overall, this is a super fun and creative adventure. I would say especially teenagers and middle schoolers, teenagers, high schoolers, college kids, like, and adults even, like, everybody can enjoy this, but especially a younger audience. This is so fun and so adventurous. And one thing that I absolutely loved about this book is that it as I read it, it makes me so nostalgic for being a kid again. And when I was a kid, I've always had a huge imagination. And when I was a kid, I would pretend like I would get all my plastic dinosaurs and animals out, and it was kind of inspired by the Land Before Time movies, but I would get them all out and pretend like they were this big herd, and they would go through all kinds of adventures in this fantasy land. I don't remember any of the details because this was like some of my earliest memories. I would also, when I got a little older than that, I played Star Wars, and I've always had a huge imagination. And this reminds me of being a kid and playing in a fantasy land universe type thing as a kid, just escaping away from this world into another world. And I believe that's one of the catchphrases, like the tagline for the series is, if you ever wanted an escape, Anelthalien is waiting. And that's honestly so true. And so the whole time I'm reading this book, she captures that imagination, that nostalgic, that kid adventure feeling that makes you honestly want to keep reading for an escape, honestly. And it's really weird because I don't read teenager characters, and I don't get into books that feature teenager characters, and yet I found myself reading this as an escape. Like when some of the nights because I didn't like read a chapter a night like faithfully, but there were some nights where I did read a chapter just for the sake of like like I had a hard day and it was just kind of nice to just kind of escape for a while or whatever. Like I had a lot of nights like that, and this was fantastic. So back to the characters though. They were very, very relatable. And like I said, Kendall especially, I really liked her, and she reminded me a lot of me when I was a teenager. And I think it was her, but she's also from Missouri, which is where I'm from. And so there was a lot of little, like there was one really, really funny line in here that was a hilarious. I laughed way too loud because I read at nighttime. One of the characters says, is trying to explain, she was taught explained. Let me get this straight. Okay, so Kendall was talking to another girl named Ella. Ella is from Anelthalien, so she doesn't know Earth or technology or anything in it. And she had explained and kind of taught Ella a little bit about this world. So Ella later on is then trying to explain this to some other characters. And she says, technology is such clever stuff that it does everything you could ever want. But anyway, they live in another world they called misery. And then Kendall's like, no, it's Missouri, and it's just a state. It's not the whole world. And I laughed so hard because of the Missouri pun. So then there's Andrew, Tad, Kendall, and Ella. Ella is actually originally from Anelthalien. The other three are from Earth, and it's like what is that called? Portal fantasy. So it starts off in Earth and you end up in Anelthalien. It doesn't actually start off in Earth. It starts off in Anelthalien, but you get the point. Yeah. Another thing that I really loved about this book is that there's a lot of lore and, creativity and the world that's built in here and the races. The building that she did on this, all the races, the world, the lore, the history was so intriguing. That's what I love about fantasy books, and for me that part was like the most intriguing. I really wanted to know more. The opening sequence didn't appear to connect immediately, and later on you kind of get like history and lore and more information about things, and then there's like little tidbits spread throughout the book that make you want to know more. And this is a longer series. Like at the moment she just published book 4 in this series, and I know for a fact she's writing I think around book 8 or something, so this is going to be a continued series. So I'm sure the lore just keeps getting bigger, the world, the fantasy races and creatures in it. So honestly, like the creativity in this book was so amazing, and just really like that's another thing that drew me into it, was just the creativity of this and all the work that she did in building everything in it. Like I'm gushing so much because I literally cannot tell you guys enough how creative it was. And honestly, my only complaint was that the characters are teenagers, which is a me problem and not a problem with the book, because they work really well, and in terms of teenage characters, they're the closest thing I would ever come to enjoying teenage characters. Like I actually enjoyed reading about them and I wanted to know more. I would say another issue that I did have was it was a little slow for me. Once they get there, there's some moments when they're staying with this race called the Sifra, and I won't spoil anything about those people, that particular race, but it's really, really cool. Also, she does really good character voices, but I'll get on that in a minute. So they're staying with the Sifra for a little bit. That kind of slowed down, and then they move on, and then they're with another family, I guess you could say, and I really enjoyed a lot of those scenes. My favorite character is actually a guy named Isildur, who is in here. I really can't tell you anything about him, but he's my favorite character and I love him. There were a few moments when they were staying with the family that got a little slow for me in the middle. It's definitely not like an action fantasy at the moment, but there are a few action scenes in there, especially toward the end, and so that was really exciting. But I really enjoyed seeing a fantasy book, because I have a really weird thing where it's not weird, but like a lot of my books are fantasy books, but there's always action, like heavy action in all of my books. And it's really different for me to read a fantasy book that is just as creative and like even more creative than my stuff, and like super creative, super fun, super adventurous, but with no action scenes, and actually seeing how a story could pull that off without any action. And I'm like, oh, that actually can be a thing. Like that's cool. And so it taught me a lot about just doing a fantasy adventure, but without all the action that I always have to drop in mine. And it's like, oh, that actually works. That's cool. So what was I going to say? So the character voices, all of the characters sound unique and different, and even the races and the people that they meet in the book are really unique and like set apart. Like you can tell who they are kind of by the way that they talk, and that's a really good exercise as authors to see if your characters' voices are unique enough, or to see if the author that you're reading, if their character voices are unique, as if you can tell who they are. And a lot of the characters in here do have really unique voices, and I love that. And the character building is so good. Like I said, I do not like reading about teenagers, but I really enjoy these 4 teenagers, and it's so weird. Kendall, the way that she talks kind of annoyed me a little bit, but she honestly is just like an average American teenager, especially, but like I mean I say like all the time anyway, and I'm sure a lot of other people do, so it's kind of just like a typical American person, and so that was really realistic. There's Andrew. He's a really sweet character. He's the youngest. I had the most difficulty connecting with him, but he is really like quiet and smart, and he reads a lot. I really enjoyed the character of Tad, and I like his character. I see why a lot of people could be like, he has a very standoffish, kind of angry, hateful attitude. But for some reason, I kind of liked it. And the moments with him and Kendall, anytime they would talk or whatever, like I really like their friendship between Kendall and Tad. Like that's kind of a cute little thing. I like the friendships between all 4 of the characters and the different dynamics between the 2 of them, Kendall and Ella. The 2 girls, sometimes when they get together, they get girly and giggly, and it's just so much fun reading about girls and kind of, again, bringing back that nostalgic feeling of being a teenager again and what it felt like to kind of be a girl and just gush with other girls, which I don't relate to or friends with a lot of girls, but you know, I did have my friends, obviously, and so it kind of gave me that nostalgic feeling. As you can see, I had a lot of quotes that I really loved, or moments in the book. Most of these are quotes, but I had a lot of moments in the book that I really, really enjoyed. And the main thing that I really loved about this book is that it is like Christian. It's Christian fantasy, so there's a lot of like really good lessons and themes. And honestly, some of these quotes were like spiritual quotes that really hit me and gave me a lesson or a theme or a word that I needed to hear when I read it. And I know that Heather H.A. Pruitt has talked about that before when she's read her books, like God gave her what she needed to write when she needed to write it. And when she's gone back and reread her books, it's the same thing. And I really love that. And I honestly feel like God, like, you can use these books to like tell people what they need to know and like help them in their own way. And I feel like Anelthalien did that for me. But it honestly just felt really nice to like read a book that ignited that inner child and that nostalgic feeling of being a kid again and just escaping into this world when I needed a little bit of escape. And to have those moments and those quotes that really hit me and touched me at just the right time with just the right thing. And honestly, I feel really blessed to call H.A. Pruitt my friend, and I feel really blessed to have gotten to read this book, and I look forward to reading the rest of the series. So I did have a lot of quotes, as you can see here. I did have a lot of quotes that I really enjoyed. I already shared with you one funny one, but I had to share with you a couple more that really honestly touched me very deeply. So hold on. One description that I really love, by the way, that reminds me of another thing. Her descriptions are so fantastic and really pulled me in, and I really felt like Anelthalien is real. Like, it made Anelthalien tangible, and the telltale sign of a really good author who is not only really creative and really well, like, writes really well and stuff, but is also the fact that when they describe things, like, the world feels like so real. It's almost like the world itself becomes another character. And for me, Anelthalien is such a real world. It's become like another character, just like Tad or Kendall or any one of the other characters. So that was really nice. And one of those descriptions that really hit me was the rock. Okay. After he spoke, Isildur strode away, his every step softly crackling. The 4 of them trailed after him, releasing even more crisp snaps into the air. For some reason, when I read that, I could honestly really hear the snapping of the twigs, and like, it reminds me of all those times, like, traipsing through the woods and, you know, trying to get through and having the branches like snap underneath your feet. Like, I could hear it audibly so much when I was reading that, and it hit me really hard. But yeah, I gotta find some of the other quotes that really touched me. Trying to find, no man is ever ready for the journey he begins until he is at its end. You are not ready because you have not begun. If you never begin, Kendall, you will never reach the end of your quest and never reach your full potential. That one hit me because I can't remember exactly what was going on, but no man is ever ready for the journey he begins until he is at his end. Like, it reminded me of just like how we're never really fully perfect and we're never fully complete basically while we're here on earth, and we're constantly growing and constantly changing until we one day like get to heaven with God. Like that'll be the day that our journey is complete and stuff, but part of that is the journey itself, not the destination's obviously the point, don't get me wrong, but it's also how we grow along the way. And it's just like, it was just a really good quote. It really got to me. Okay, so next, okay. If you hear nothing else, hear this. Your arrival. That's actually probably a spoilery quote. I don't want to get too much. But basically, Isildur has a lot of really good quotes that just give me like reminders of the Bible. And I really, really loved it. So I marked down all of those and they were so good. Okay. You are part of a family and a plan larger than you can imagine, but if you stay here and try to hold on to this family not meant for you, you will miss out on everything ahead of you. That one hit me hard because it like, a lot of us have dreams or goals or things that we try to hold on to that we want out of life, even things that we may pray to God about, asking him to give us this or help us have that. And he may not answer those prayers. And if we're in kind of a waiting period or a situation where we don't get those things that we want, or we feel like our dreams aren't going to come true, it can be really heartbreaking. But sometimes we try to hold on to something that's not meant for us. And if that happens, we'll miss out on everything else that God has planned. And it's a really hard lesson to learn. And honestly, that's kind of the season that I've been in. And so that was one of the quotes that really got to me. And I'm honestly getting teary-eyed just thinking about it again, because like, I needed to hear this again and again in different ways, and it means and holds so much meaning to me in so many different ways. And so that really hits me hard every time. That's one of my favorite quotes in the whole book, honestly, just because it's one of the lessons that I needed to learn. And that's one thing that I love about H.A. Pruitt and Anelthalien in particular, is that it's not just a book. It is an adventure and a book and an escape, but it's also something that I feel like is very God inspired, that is a book that can touch your life and speak to you in ways that you need when you need it. And I feel like this is the reason why we write, like writers and authors like me, when we write, inspired by God, like that's the goal, like that's what we hope to achieve, is that God can use our books to touch somebody's life. And I can promise you that Anelthalien has touched me in a very special way, and I absolutely love this book and I highly recommend it to everybody. It's super clean, it's super fun, it's super adventurous. Like I said, my only complaint was that they're teenagers and it got a little slow, and that's honestly not that big of a deal, because like both of those are just me problems really, and not so much anything to do with the book or the author or anything. Now I will say that this, I can tell that this is like her old writing and it needed to be a little bit better edited, and like the writing could have been tightened up a little bit. But that's pretty much my only complaint, like an actual complaint that's not just a me problem. I honestly really loved this book, and like I said, I can't wait for the rest of the series. So Anelthalien, I'll have the link in the description below. And the next book after this is Earthquaking, and then Water Falling, and then Water Rising are the next books in the series. So check out these books. I promise you, you will not regret it. I'm highly recommending this to everybody. So please go check out her book. Like, trust me, especially if you need an escape from the world and you just want to delve into a good book and disappear into a world that genuinely feels real with characters that are so much fun. Anelthalien is waiting. So please check it out. Overall, my personal rating is 4 stars. And like I said, it's just a little slow in teenage characters, even though I really connected with them, and she did such a fantastic job. Since I don't really read or enjoy teenage characters, like that says a lot about her that she was able to pull me in. So 4 stars. I love this book. I love the lessons in there. Please go check it out. It's so worth it. And in the meantime, if you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you liked my review of Anelthalien, which is a clean, wonderful book that I really enjoyed, then check out my review of The Other World by Abby Emmons. That was such a clean, fun, amazing romance book. So check that out. You don't want to miss it. I give you all the details in that video.